Rome is a city that begs to be photographed, and I didn't go there just to fight through selfie sticks at the Colosseum. Yes, I wanted some fantastic architectural shots of Rome, but I wanted something different. I wanted to photograph something that not every single tourist had already taken photos of. I wanted to take an architectural shot of Rome that felt authentically Rome. So with just my camera in hand, no tripod and no plan, I wandered around until I found it. A quiet little restaurant with more character than any postcard. In this video, I'll show you how I shot it handheld and turned it into one of my favorite images from the trip. So while walking around Rome one afternoon, I stumbled upon this restaurant called Alfredo's. It's a restaurant that's been around in Rome for many, many years, and if I remember right, I think it even claims to be the birthplace of chicken Alfredo. I could be wrong, but maybe it's just Alfredo pasta in general. I don't know. Obviously, there are a lot of amazing restaurants in Rome, but what drew my eye specifically to Alfredo's was the signage on the outside. My gut told me that when lit up, it would give off this amazing neon glow. And if they did come on, because I wasn't 100% sure, the first time I saw it was in the afternoon, if I could somehow frame up the shot capturing the glow from the signage as well as elements of the street and the dinner crowd outside, I knew I would capture something just different. A mix of tradition, atmosphere, and a little bit of unexpected color in the eternal city. So let's begin the editing portion of the video by actually looking at the series of handheld shots that I took. If you're noticing here on the right side, as far as the settings, straight at a camera, yeah, I was shooting at a pretty high ISO. In this case, it was 6400. This one was 4000, another 6400. I think I had set the ISO to auto. Ideally, I wanted to take the shot with a higher shutter speed. I don't have the most steady hands in the world, so going handheld and shooting at a more closed down aperture around f8, yeah, at f8, I knew I was gonna have to bump up the ISO pretty high. It's a lot higher than I think a lot of photographers would be comfortable with. But in today's day and age with tech, editing tech the way it is, as we'll probably even do in this shot, I think taking away the noise that would potentially appear in a shot can be cleaned up with a click of a button. So now I was trying to decide the composition of the shot and specific shot of where I could take it. As you'll probably see in the footage of me trying to do that, I was somewhat limited. Clearly I wanted to capture the signage, I wanted to capture the atmosphere, the cobblestone streets, but there were some plants in the way. Granted, the plants are there for decor, but they're also kind of separating. I believe it was another outside restaurant, so it was kind of acting as a divider. There were cars, there were mopeds and Vespas in the way. So as you can see, if I would have done a 1-point perspective, this sign up top, the Alfredo's, you can barely see it here, but it starts to disappear. And had I taken this as a vertical, it would have started to, I think, just introduce a lot of blank space, a lot of windows to the left and right of the vertical sign, which I don't think would have done a whole lot. It wasn't the most flattering. So yeah, I had a lot of variety to choose from. Clearly people were walking around in front of the camera. Here are the plants. I thought, why not lean into it at some point, use them to frame up the shot. Out of all the shots that I ended up taking, I decided to use this one. And the reason I really like this one, because of two people in particular. I was using I'm gonna bump the exposure here so you can see this a little better. Mainly was the plants. I did like the way they were framing the shot a little bit, but then if we zoom in here, this guy here, who's clearly a server, and then this guy here, just leaning into the relaxed, I don't know, evening dinner atmosphere of Rome. If you've ever been there, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But with it being a restaurant, I really like this gentleman here, appearing in the black vest, the white button-up shirt. Clearly he's a server, and it really emphasizes again that this is a shot of a restaurant, if you couldn't tell that by the signage. But anyway, so yeah, people are moving around. I captured this one, and I thought, that's it. This is the one I want. Let's take the exposure back down to exactly where it was, which is obviously very, very dark. Thing I'm gonna do initially is I'm just going to take the highlights just as a midway point. I'm just kind of shooting from the hip here. Let's go -50 and let's bump the shadows up 50. And now with it looking like that, with a little bit more range in the shot, I'm gonna bump up the ISO, or excuse me, the exposure. And I'm gonna bump this up. I'm hitting the Alt or Option button to see how much highlights are kind of being lost a little bit because of raising the exposure. Obviously, it's gonna be the restaurant sign. The higher I go, more of it's going to appear. The higher exposure I go. I mean, if I do that, I mean, 1.4, that's okay. I feel like it's going a little bit brighter than it actually was in real life. Let's do maybe 1.2. So looking at the highlights again, yeah, the signage is starting to clip a little bit. I'm perfectly fine with that. Not a big deal. It's a bright neon sign around twilight. Of course it's going to stand out. So I'm okay with that. I might adjust these highlights and shadows later. Whites, again, I'm just going to make it a little bit more vivid, bump it up to about 11. Blacks, I'll take it down until some of the black areas get really dark. I don't have to do much here, just -5. Okay, nothing crazy. The next thing I want to mess with is white balance. Now, when it comes to twilight shots, in my opinion, I think this is the one area where we as photographers can take some creative liberties. And the reason I say that is this is one of the rare instances in nature where the atmosphere in the sky itself gives us some really crazy, funky colors. Sometimes we get some vivid blues, pinks, and purples, oranges, reds, things like that. I say, as a creative, and again, every person's different, lean into it a little bit. For instance, if you did a 100% accurate white balance, I know these tablecloths are white, so if we go off that, you know, an accurate white balance just looks off. It looks funky. So this is a great instance where doing a spot-on accurate white balance actually doesn't serve the image very well. It does quite the opposite. It makes it look pretty ugly. So let's take it back down to where it was. I think it was 6,000, maybe 10. I'm gonna see what 5,000 looks like. This might be a little too much on the cool side. Yeah, too much on the cool side. Still at 6,000, to me, it's still slightly warm. So instead of in the middle, I'm still gonna lean towards the higher side. So let's do 5,700. Yeah, I like that. 5,700, and I'm actually going to bump up the 10. Let's try 20. This might be too much. Yeah, too much. Let's do 12. I like that. Okay, that's good. The next thing I want to do that almost goes without saying, it's pretty standard, is correct for the verticals. Clearly, I had to point the camera up a little bit higher than I would like to. So I'm just using the stone here as a reference point. I'm going to assume this is a gutter. I'm just going to give the gutter the benefit of the doubt and assume that it is completely straight and vertical. Let's see how that looks. It's not bad. I feel like we're getting a little bit of a top-heavy, funky look. This is another opinion piece. Whenever you take shots that are pointed up quite a bit, even tilt shift shots, where they're shifted up quite a bit to capture the whole height of a building. Even when a building looks perfect or is perfectly straight and vertical, in my opinion, sometimes it gets this funky top-heavy look, and I don't like it. So I'm actually going to subtly lean into, just real subtly, I'm gonna lean into that angle. I'm gonna bring, where are we at? I'm gonna bring this in just a hair. Because I think it's almost like computer generated images of people in movies. You start to hit that uncanny valley part. And I do think there's a portion of the brain that even in real life, we do look up. Our own perspective sees the top of buildings as further away. So again, my opinion, I think it's okay to have a little bit of that. And I don't think looking at this that anyone's going to say any different. So, okay, let's just bump up, add a little bit of texture, a little bit of clarity, just some small portions of contrast. I know there's not a lot of haze in there, but just a subtle bounce or a subtle bump might help out just a bit. Vibrance, there's a lot of color here. I don't need to do much. I'm gonna just bump those up just an even number, 10 and 10. As I'm looking at this shot, I feel that the shot is exposed well for the signage more than anything. And I'm missing a little bit of that atmosphere based on the surrounding, everything else that's framing up the shot. Let's take this photo now and let's throw it into Photoshop. All right, just for kicks, I'm gonna duplicate that. Now, like I mentioned, there's parts of this where the brightness, in my opinion, is fine. There's other parts I want to raise up a bit more. So let's go back into Lightroom and I'm gonna take the same exact shot and I'm just gonna bump up the exposure from 1.2. Let's go up to, let's try 1.4. Maybe lift the shadows a hair. 60. Let's see what that looks like. Now we'll take the same shot and throw that on top in Photoshop. And to make this easy, I'm gonna use the brighter one as a base, so to speak. This top one, I'm gonna hide it. And then the only thing I'm gonna use a very, very soft brush. Yeah, the softest brush I can use. And just at 20%, I'm gonna brush this signage back in. And I'm gonna go pretty big and pretty broad with this. Very, very subtle. Yeah, but it just kind of tones everything down a bit more. So honestly, for the most part, I think a lot of the heavy lifting has been done. If I just move this or merge this onto its own layer, I would start working with this now. There is some fine tuning we can do. I did have my wife hanging over my shoulder for a while when it came to this, and she said the green stood out too much, in her opinion. There was just too much green. So let's select the green, and she bent from the sign. So we'll take the green here, and we'll desaturate it a bit. Like if we go crazy with it, all the way, I mean, let's take it down to like negative 20-ish. And then let's just take the brightness down a hair. Let's go negative 15. Yeah, it looks a little less nuclear, a little less neon-ish, although it is a neon sign, and it helps out to see the lettering a bit more. Okay, this is just the way I like to work. I'm gonna throw that visible onto its own. I think there's some cleaning up that we could do. I'm not a big fan of this wire here, so we're gonna use some AI removal tools to take care of this. I don't mind leaving the rest of the little things, whatever they are, hooks and metal pieces out of the building. I'm okay with the wires. That's just part of the aesthetic of Rome. Thing I am gonna get rid of though is this as well, this little construction sign thing and the chain that goes along with it. We got the distracting things out of the way. I think for the most part, that's pretty good for my own personal taste. I'm gonna add a bit of a vignette, but maybe before we do that, I'm gonna crop this to, let's just do kind of a standard 8x10, something that'll look good for the gram. Since that Alfredo sign is kind of the main focal point, I don't need a ton of this space. Let's use that rule of thirds guideline there. Let's try that. I think it looks pretty good. We'll double this up, multiply it. We're gonna throw a real subtle vignette on this whole thing. I'm gonna modify this and feather it. Let's just do 250 pixels. Delete the center out of that. And then change the opacity of this multiply layer. Let's just do 30. We're gonna take some creative liberties. Boom, there we go. That is pretty much it. Now, from here on out, there might be some subtle things that you do and tweak and adjust. Clearly, every photographer is different, so everyone's got their own personal taste and style. But I want to show you something. I think this is a pretty good shot. I personally like it. Like I said, it's one of my favorites. This is the original shot. It's okay. You can take photos with extremely high ISO. Mess around with some highlights, shadows, and other adjustments. You might have a pretty amazing photo in what you might otherwise kind of disregard. If you want to see another video about how I set up, shot, and edited a shot, feel free to take a look at the video that's popping up on your screen now. If you made it all the way here to the end, I sincerely appreciate you taking the time to watch. That's it for this one. We will see you on the next video.